There are so many Trump attack tweets, and then as a result, so many tweets attack Trump that it can be very hard to know sometimes when there really is an issue and what is actually just the usual partisan attacks. But the US president's decision to use what many have said is racist terminology to go home to 4 US-born congresswomen has finally crossed the line to many critics. Now, that included the Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt and the next Prime Minister Boris Johnson at last night's Talk Radio Sun-hosted leader debate, which we'll hear from in just a moment. But this is the tweet in question. So Donald Trump, as part of quite a rant, it has to be said of these congresswomen, why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? Then come back and show us how it's done. These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. Now, he's said again today, those tweets were not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. Someone who knows the president far better than most is Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He is a former strategist to President Trump and remains a close friend and advisor of the American president. Sebastian, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Is there anything about Donald Trump's terminology in these tweets that you think are racist?
Well, there isn't, and he isn't a racist. I'm so glad, Dan, you are a real journalist or professional talk show host because you actually read it out. And what did he say? He said they can go to these benighted countries, these disasters, and try and fix them and then come back to America. Race wasn't mentioned. It wasn't that he's deporting people he disagrees with. It's about people who have made their living as the new face of the Democrat Party as slagging off our country again and again and again. And they've said un-American things. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC see America as the problem. Well, if that's the case, then they are welcome to go elsewhere and fix those countries and come back. That's what the president said.
Do you agree with the president that those 4 congresswomen hate our country, as he put it?
Yeah, I think they really do, because there's no other explanation for the kinds of things, for example, that Ilhan Omar, who was saved by America from the absolute hellhole that is Somalia, when she comes here, becomes a congresswoman, and then literally in an interview, your listeners can go and check the video, laughs about Al-Qaeda, talks about 9/11, our 7/7, as some people doing something. This is a person who said, when she speaks to 400 junior school kids, that America is a fundamentally unjust country. Really, in comparison to what, Ilhan Omar? In comparison to Somalia? So yes, they really have a hatred for what America represents, and that's why they're trying to change it with these insane plans, such as Omar as AOC's Green New Deal, which is just, it's socialism under another garb, Dan.
But Gorka, if you put the Somalian-born congresswoman to one side, don't you think the big problem here is that the 3 others, including AOC, who you reference, were born in America? They are American-born. So how does it work saying something like, go home? Their home is America.
You've got to know. Well, no, it isn't, because they detest it. And you've got to know what Rashida Tlaib did. I mean, this is the backstory. These are the real facts of the case. Rashida Tlaib recently tweeted, she may have been born here, but she recently tweeted with regards to events in the Middle East, how she is crying for her people in Palestine. Hang on a second. You're an American congresswoman. What do you mean, your people in Palestine? These people hate America, and they're confused at the very least. And what is the president doing, Dan? He's calling them out.
But President Trump's wife, Dr. Gorka, Melania Trump, Slovenian-born.
Yes, and she loves America, and she makes it very clear every time she speaks at an event with the president, at one of her own events with her Be Best motto. It's about the love she has for this country. The same as I do. I'm a legal immigrant. I chose this country. And likewise, she doesn't get up in front of an audience of 20,000 people to slag off America. And that's what these 4 people... Did you hear what Presley said? The 4th horsewoman of the apocalypse yesterday. She actually said a black voice must only talk about black things. A black person, a brown person must only talk with a brown voice. That's racism, Dan. It's incredible. Could you imagine if somebody said a white person must only talk with a white voice? These people are off the deep end.
Of course, there are extremists on both sides. I think everyone does agree with that. But I just want to hammer home this idea of those two words, go home. Because, Dr. Gorka, you must have heard the testimonies of so many ordinary Americans over the past 48 hours who have spoken about how those words have been used against them over the decades. And many of these people speaking in that way are actually Trump supporters who are concerned about him using that phrase.
No, the president's supporters know exactly what he's doing. Look, the Democrat Party, there was a leak from the Democrat Party yesterday, incredibly embarrassing. AOC has massive recognition, 73% recognition, Ocasio-Cortez, but a fraction of the people who recognize her name look at her positively. Ilhan Omar. This is incredible. 52% of voters know who she is, this Somali ingrate. Only 9% look at her positively. The president, with these tweets, has done a genius masterstroke. He's turned the spotlight onto these people. He's made them represent the radicalism that is the Democrat Party, and that's exactly what he had to do. So, no, the Trump base is right behind the president, and they know who these four women really are.
Sebastian, I know you know a lot about politics in the UK, so you won't be surprised to know that these tweets have gone down disastrously. Full-on condemnation across the spectrum of British politics. Does that surprise you in any way?
Not really. When I was in the White House, one of the first trips I took on behalf of the president was to the UK for a bilateral. And I found out as soon as I got to London that the fake news industrial complex is as powerful in the UK as it is here. So, of course, he's being misrepresented. It's being spun, misquoted. Unlike you, who actually read out the quotes, of course, the response has been largely negative because that's what the media would have you believe, the legacy media would have you believe about my old boss, Donald Trump.
Now, we actually hosted a debate with the two two future potential prime ministers, Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt, of course, one of them. Most commentators expect it to be Boris Johnson will be announced as Prime Minister on Tuesday. But we asked both of these men about Trump's tweets last night. Obviously, Jeremy Hunt, he is the current Foreign Secretary. So very, what he says is very, very important. I just want to play you, Sebastian, exactly what these two men had to say about those tweets, and we'll get your reaction on the other side.
I have 3 half-Chinese children, and if anyone... and they're British citizens, born on the NHS, and if anyone ever said to them, go back to China, I would be utterly appalled. And I would say something else. It is totally un-British to do that. So I hope that would never happen in this country.
Mr. Johnson. Well, I have to say, I think that relations between the UK, I've said what I've said about the relations between the UK and the US are incredibly important. But if you're the leader of a great multiracial, multicultural society, you simply cannot use that kind of language about sending people back to where they came from. I mean, that went out decades and decades ago, and thank heavens for that. So it's totally unacceptable. I agree with the Prime Minister. Not for the first time, I mean.
Was it a racist remark by President Trump?
I've said what I said. I think it was totally unacceptable in a modern, multiracial country which you're trying to lead. I simply can't understand how a leader of that country could come to say that.
Why wouldn't you condemn it as racist then?
Well, you can take from what I've said what I think about President Trump's words.
Mr. Hunt, was it racist, Mark?
I think that... Look, I'm Foreign Secretary. This is the President of the country which happens to be our closest ally. And so it is not going to help the situation to use that kind of language about the President of the United States. I can understand how many people in this country would want politicians like me to use those words and would feel that sentiment. But I will make absolutely clear, I hope I have made absolutely clear, how totally offensive it is to me that people are still saying that kind of thing.
Let's kick off with Boris Johnson, who we just heard then, Sebastian Gorka, a very big supporter of Donald Trump, but highly critical about this tweet.
Look, Boris does what Boris thinks is best for Boris. I like him. There's a lot of similarities between him and my old boss, President Trump. But at the end of the day, if you look at his career track, he's very good at testing the way the wind blows. I think he made a tactical decision last night to be popular, and so he wanted to pile in on top of the president. But hey, that's Boris's decision. He has every right to do that.
And what about Jeremy Hunt? I mean, yes, he is running to be Prime Minister and Tory leader, but he is right now the Foreign Secretary. In your view, was it appropriate for him to be so critical of Boris Johnson? Of Donald Trump.
Of the president. Look, you're a democracy. You can do whatever you want. But again, he got it completely wrong. It's great. He's got adopted children from China. Fabulous. But we're not talking about sending people back because they're foreign. It's not what the president said. It would be analogous to if his children grew up, got seats in the House of Commons, and then for 7 months every day slagged off the UK. At that point, it might be appropriate to say, hey, Buster, if you hate Britain, why don't you go to China, try and fix it first, and then you can come back here? Because that's what the president said, and what Hunt said last night was a perversion of the truth.
Dr. Gorka, do you believe that Donald Trump has many supporters who are racist?
No, I don't, because he's not a racist. Look, this is a man who, in one of his first ever actions, used his presidential prerogative to pardon 2 black individuals who had been wrongly prosecuted, a heavyweight boxer called Johnson and a black grandmother who had been put in prison for drug dealing. And he used his executive privilege to pardon both of them and to get them released. How is that racism? How does that appeal to racists? Of course it doesn't. Again, this is spin because, look, at the end of the day, Dan, you're as smart as anyone out there. The left is out of arguments, whether it's trying to undermine the Brexit decision or whether it's trying to take down Donald Trump. When they have no arguments left, what do? They call you a racist, and that is a mark of success because at the end of the day, when you can't argue the policies, you go ad hominem and you use the worst slur there is out there, but it is a sign of the left crumbling.
I'm just wondering, though, because you say Boris Johnson is doing what is good for Boris. Right. Is there any similarity with Donald Trump? Because a lot of people say they're very similar politicians. They're very similar in terms of how they play the media, in terms of how they use social media. And is there not a bit of dog whistle politics going on here? Because Donald Trump knows that this sort of message is going to be popular with his supporters, his base.
His base aren't racist. His base are fed up by a political elite on both left and right that have betrayed this nation. Look, they've been supine for 60 years. We've seen jobs exported to China. We've seen opioids come into the country at such a rate that we had 72,000 overdose deaths last year. That's 20,000 more than the Americans who died in the Vietnam War. Do you think he needed this job? This was a billionaire who was popular in the press, whose name was a global brand. He's doing this for one reason, to fix a broken and corrupt Washington, D.C. So, no, this isn't about dog whistles. This isn't about some kind of atavistic racism. This is about 2 things: patriotism versus anti-Americanism. That's what it's about. And it's the same thing we see with Brexit or Remainers. It's about standing up for what is great in British tradition and then on the other side supporting faceless globalist bureaucrats in Brussels. The analogy is so similar. There's a reason that Brexit and the Trump phenomena are kissing cousins.
Now, Dr. Gorka, just moving on very quickly, I know you were at the social media summit with President Trump just a few days ago. What was he like in person? What type of form was he on? How do you think he is coping? Do you think mentally he is just as strong? Because obviously, there's all of this speculation about, is he handling the pressure? Is the pressure getting to him, Sebastian, finally?
Your listeners can judge for themselves. Go to my website, sebgorka.com, SEBGORKA. We posted his speech, video, and the transcript. He was on form. It was hilarious. He cracked jokes. He spent an hour with us at the podium talking. He took questions. I don't know how it does it. Most presidents end up aging 20 years in 8. This guy is getting younger and fresher every day. But don't take my word for it, Dan. Go to sebgorka.com, check out the video from the White House, check out the transcript. You'll be laughing, you'll be
Well,
guffawing,
I was just looking at this video. What happened? There was some type of altercation. Someone threatened you to a fight. Is that right?
Oh, that's afterwards. So after we had the social
went
media
down?
summit with the president, we, his guests, were invited to the Rose Garden for his historic press conference on the census that we're just about to hold. And then at the end of the press conference, a journalist from CNN who writes for Playboy insulted the president and then insulted all of the president's guests, said in front of the press that we are all demonically possessed. And that's when I challenged him, called him out for being a punk and not a journalist, and then he asked me to go and fight him outside. So, Brian Karem, if you're listening, you're still a punk, but somebody has to tell you to your face.
Was Trump aware of that situation?
He was back in the Oval Office. It happened after he walked back into the Oval, and we were still in the Rose Garden.
Got it. Well, there's never a dull moment around you, Dr. Gorka. That's Dr. Sebastian Gorka, former strategist to President Trump, remains a close friend and personal advisor of the president. But after the break, we are going to hear the other side of this, going to be joined by Stephen Cobb, the Democratic strategist and former Obama administration appointee. Is Donald Trump racist? You've heard one side of the argument. 0344 499 1000 is my number. Is Donald Trump racist, given that 3 out of the 4 of these congresswomen were born in the US? Before the break, we heard from Dr. Sebastian Gorka, a former strategist to President Trump, who says absolutely not. This is a man without a racist bone in his body. But someone who disagrees is Stephen Cobb, the Democratic strategist, former Deputy Attorney General of Virginia, and former Obama administration appointee. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. Stephen Cobb, Sebastian Gorka says absolutely no racist bone in Donald Trump's body. What do you think?
Well, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, I mean, the president's tweet was racist. This isn't the first time he said something that's been racially insensitive, and this goes one step further. And more than that, he's doubled down and said he doesn't really care. And so long as he gets some popular feedback on Twitter, he'll continue to say whatever.
I mean, is it dog whistle politics or actually a genuine feeling of racism in your view?
I mean, at this point, I'm not sure you can really tell the difference or that it matters. I mean, he's dog whistling to racists, so does it matter if he really believes it or if he's just comfortable saying it? It doesn't make it okay.
So today he has tweeted that in response to the press conference overnight by the 4 Democratic congresswomen, he says they have been spewing some of the most vile, hateful and disgusting things ever said by a politician, but believes they get a free pass and a big embrace from the Democrat Party. He says these 4 women are anti-Israel, anti-USA, pro-terrorist and public shouting of the F word. Those are the things he accuses them of. What's your response?
Well, the president is clearly prone to hyperbole and takes any form of criticism and blows it out of proportion to say that anyone who criticizes President Trump, in his mind, is anti-American, which is a ridiculous perspective and ridiculous point of view. The United States is built on having different points of view and being in the public eye, whether you're the President of the United States, a member of Congress, a member of the United States Senate, you have to be able to take criticism and move forward. And that doesn't mean the people who are criticizing you are bad people, unless you're Donald Trump, and then anyone who says anything bad about you is apparently un-American.
Now, Donald Trump has also pointed to apparent unpopularity of these 4 figures. They are moving the Democratic Party further to the left. Is that something that you have any concern over, especially their embrace of socialism over capitalism?
I would push back on the notion that they are pushing the party to the left. Yes, these are 4 very liberal members, but if you look at the gains that were undertaken by the Democratic Party in the 2018 congressional cycle, the majority of those members are from the more conservative wing of the Democratic Party. Over here we call them blue dogs or new Democrats. And so the overwhelming majority of those that were elected in that cycle identify more toward the moderate wing. So while you have these four individuals who are passionate and outspoken and more toward the liberal end of the party, I think it's a misconception to think that just because they have a large Twitter following and affinity on the left, that the party has moved decidedly in that direction.
Do you think these tweets, whether they're racist or not, will actually just make Donald Trump even more popular amongst his base?
I'm sure that is red meat for much of his base, and they love it. And most importantly, the president is the king of creating distraction. And so rather than focusing on the shortcomings of his administration as a matter of policy and function, we're spending these 2 days talking about his racist tweets. And so it misdirects a lot of focus that could otherwise be shining a spotlight on the shortcomings of the administration.
Now, some people in the Democratic Party saying this is exactly why we should move towards impeachment proceedings. Your Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, still seems to be resisting that move. Where do you stand on it?
I think the Speaker is right to be cautious. No one understands the underpinnings of the House, but both the legality and the politics, as well as she does. And so making sure that the committee functions are going through and working through prudently and carefully is an appropriate course of action.
Stephen Cobb, thank you so much for being on the show. That's Stephen Cobb, Democratic strategist, former Deputy Attorney General of Virginia in Washington, D.C. What do you think? Is Donald Trump racist? Are his tweets telling 4 US-born congresswomen to go home a massive overstepping of the mark? Or actually, is this Trump talking Trumpian language to Trumpian supporters? Is Donald Trump racist? Sean from Gosport is on the phone. Sean, do you think that the US president is racist?
Hello, Dan. I've been listening to your show. It's been really good. And
thank you, Sean.
The 3 questions you asked earlier, the answers are all yes. The guy's just, for me, he's beginning to cross lines that I don't think that any reasonable person can forgive him for crossing. And yeah, he's absolutely playing to his voting base in America. And that was his kind of strategy from the beginning of his presidency anyway, was just to use Twitter, take out the mass media in the middle, and just speak to his base straight away on social media. And I know you had that the strategist from
Sebastian Gorka, who actually worked for Donald Trump. And he says, look, Donald Trump isn't being racist at all. At the end of the day, these people are anti-American. And so he's saying he wants them out because they're anti-American. Do you buy that argument?
Not completely. I mean, again, there's a lot of sort of stories out there, so you're not quite sure what's correct and what isn't correct anymore. And I've seen the odd tweets from these people, but then does that then give Trump the right to go out on a national platform and say, well, these people don't like it, they should go home? As I understand it, a lot of them were born in America, they're American citizens, so they're already home. You had the Democratic strategist, or the former guy on earlier. If I was him and I was in the Democrats' chair, I've got a bit of a left field candidate to combat him.
Oh, go on.
I'd be on the phone to Dwayne Johnson, the former WWE wrestler.
But you know what? He would win. He would win. He would almost certainly win.
Absolutely destroy Donald Trump. It would be so funny because he's got that charisma. He's had the acting training. He'd be able to command a stage. He'd be able to do the speeches. I mean, if they put Hillary Clinton or someone of that ilk up again, we're going to have another 4 years of Trump. And as much as he might be good for jobs in America and there might be a bit of growth, do I want to listen to another 4 years of this rhetoric? The answer is no.